Hello, Maureen. Hello, Meg.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of Phoenix Rising. It's good to see some new faces today after yesterday's call. It's lovely to have you with us. So we wanted to start off today by just going through any reflections that we have from yesterday. Is that the first thing we wanted to start with, wasn't it? So firstly, we want to say Happy New Year, Happy 2020.
Happy new decade.
I think one of the things that we wanted to share was our experience this morning at sunrise. So we just wanted to share this with you guys because we were all chatting today, and we've got Annabelle staying with us, who is doing a session on day 4 for you guys, and we're all reflecting on our morning this morning because I went to the lighthouse in Byron Bay for a ceremony, and James went up the top of the hill. And it was an interesting morning for me this morning because I was feeling a whole bunch of feelings along with irritation. There was some peace, but there was also some irritation and some sadness there. And when I tapped into the sadness, it wasn't all completely mine. And I realized that I was at the lighthouse with probably around 1,000 other people. So there was lots of different nationalities, and I think that there's in our society right now, there is a level of sadness and grief because there's so many horrible things that we're being shown are going on in our society.
Also the bushfires.
The bushfires, which were mentioned.
Yeah, you can't understate what effect the bushfires are actually having on the collective psyche of Australia and overseas.
Absolutely. And at the same time, there was also a level of irritation for me. There were a number of things that were going on there that I noticed. I felt some irritation at. And what happened was I realised that what I needed to do was to actually really focus on going inward. So instead of being irritated by what was going on out there, it was essential for me to bring my focus inward so that I could focus on that piece. Because if I didn't do that, I would have been distracted by all the stuff that was going on out there, and I would have actually felt the irritation even more. So that was a really interesting thing. And then Annabelle shared with me that there was a similar thing going on for her. And then we chatted to James, who wasn't with us this morning, but was at the top of our hill. So did you want to share what you experienced as well?
Yeah, I went up the top of the hill, and I knew Mozzies would probably come at some point. And so I got up there really early, about, 4:30 or something, and set up a whole little Mozzie dome and stuff. But the thing is, I didn't want to look at the sunrise through the Mozzie dome. And I just noticed fairly close to sunrise, the feeling of the whole land got really excited. But at the same time that the land got excited, the Mozzies came out. And so here I am, I have a cup of tea, I have a bit of cake that Mo had made for Christmas, and I'm sitting there like as happy as a pig, whatever you want to call it. And I'm watching everything happening, but I'm getting stung like a crazy man with Mozzies. And it was just a really interesting experience because I picked myself up I could feel the excitement of the land, but at the same time, I was allowing myself to focus on Mozzies. And that was a big lesson. Like we talked about symbology yesterday. When you become in tune with the way life, the biggest university we possibly can have, works, you start to pick up a lot of symbols and a lot of things that happen around you with sign. And it was very striking that I had this conversation then like a couple of hours later from Kirst's experience, actually expecting to have a blissed out experience because they had singing bowls and everything else like that there, and to find that there was irritation down there too. So for me, it really says that if we're going to achieve what we want to achieve in 2020 and beyond, and I don't look at it at 2020, I'm looking beyond now, then it's even more important that we get to a place where we've got stillness inside, and that becomes our point, our starting point. Not a point of refuge anymore. Previously, it's been a point of refuge for so many. But if we use it as a starting point and a launch pad, then everything we do doesn't get buffeted anymore. I mean, a couple of you have asked us to have a chat about emotions and how not to be buffeted by them. Well, that's the biggest thing. So many people talk to us and they go, how do I not get engrossed and emotionally triggered in a conversation? Well, there's two aspects to that. And the first and the biggest one is to learn, oh, no, there's two aspects. The smallest one is to learn the techniques of the conversation. The biggest one is to realize to do the work before the conversation even happens so that you don't get emotionally triggered. In other words, you've released the emotion so there's no entrainment within you to the emotion that's been presented in the conversation, so it washes straight past you, hence the term water off a duck's back. So when we get to this point inside ourselves where we launch from this place of stillness, things will, and I think, was it Louise who, you mentioned courage with vulnerability. Someone else, though, mentioned, and it might have been you as well, about comfortable in uncertainty. Lou, was that you? Just not if it was.
There was a number of people.
No, number of people said it.
Yeah.
But
I think Ali, not Ali, Grace. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful question. How do I become comfortable in uncertainty? If you can do that, then you'll actually realize you're comfortable in life, because if you haven't realized, life is completely uncertain. And the only thing happening in life is change. And people don't fear change. This is a big misconception. People don't fear change. We fear the other side of change. And it's not that we fear the other side of change so much, is that we fear we don't have what it takes to get what we want on the other side of change. So when you actually take it to the next level, down to that level, you realize, because if you went, I fear change, you've got nothing to work with, because change is an intangible and a constant. But when you realize, I fear that I don't have what it takes to make it on the other side of change, that gives you something tangible to go, right, if I'm fearing that, what's my next step? What skill do I need to learn to actually allow myself the confidence to start making, the inroads into where I want to go, the direction I want to head, etc.
So we wanted to share that with you guys today, because no matter where you are on the path, you're still going to experience these things that can be irritating, or you'll experience things that will, cause feelings of grief or sadness. And it's not that we'll ever stop feeling those. It's how we choose to actually deal with them. So a lot of the session today that we're sharing with you guys is about that, because so many people have asked about emotions, particularly the anger and the fear of uncertainty, and also sadness and grief. And all of those emotions come
throw
with
guilt and shame in there as well.
And all of those emotions come with transitioning from one phase of life to another, or one experience to another experience even, or moving from an identity of I was this person to a new identity of this is who I'm choosing to be, or releasing identity altogether. So emotions are really important to us. And for today's session entitled Landing Powerfully in 2020, we really wanted to share these things with you, because we considered them to be extremely important. James mentioned yesterday about the levels of our psyche, and when I've spoken to people, the way that I say is we've got 3 bodies, and this is incredibly simplistic. So for those people who understand energy and energy bodies and chakras and all those things, please understand that I'm just simplifying this to its complete base level. But we've got 3 bodies, and the first one is our physical body. So it's that body we can see in the mirror. The second is our emotional body. So our emotions influence our physical body. And the third one is our spiritual body, or the causal body. And so the thing that stands between our spiritual and our physical is our emotional. And if our emotional body is blocked, or if it's static and fuzzy and all stuff all around it, we're not going to be able to connect in with our spirit. So if I hadn't done the work that I'd done, it would have been much more difficult for me over at the lighthouse this morning, Byron Bay Lighthouse, because of all of the stuff that was going on. And empathetically, because we're all connected, when we're picking up on other people's emotions, if we are static and fuzzy in our own emotional body, we're going to pick up more on the anger and the sadness and the grief of everyone else's body, and we're going to be more affected by it, and therefore we're not going to be able to come into peace with ourselves. So that's emotions. And probably everybody who's on this call, if you've followed any of our work, you would know that emotions are really important to us. So
we're probably in Australia's heartland of the spiritual refugee or a spiritual bypasser, a person who runs to the Om in the lotus position without going through the emotional gateway.
And that's not coming from a judgmental perspective, because we've both done it in some way ourselves. It's a natural part of seeking spiritual enlightenment, is to look towards the positive and the enlightening and want that, and not necessarily admit the shadow and the darkness and allow ourselves to be with that part of us.
And even go even further than that, we're on one of the major songlines in Australia, which is the easternmost point of Byron Bay, coming off the Nightcap Range. So this land naturally attracts people at the poles. So that's actually one of the other reasons. So, but the thing with that is that quite regularly a person in that sense will go, oh, Dad was just doing the best he could with what he's had. But at the same time, in the next sentence, they'll get angry at Dad, or you'll feel there's an energetic charge to it. If you don't go through the emotional gateway to the deeper healing, you always cap your spiritual connection in whatever realm or lexicon or language your spiritual language is. I don't mind what that is. Matter of fact, one of the things that Kirst just mentioned in her explanation, it can be explained psychologically, and it can be explained in all the different modalities. So we'll touch on many different modalities to give as many people as possible the tools to use. And the tools that we give you are across any dimension. So they are spiritual, emotional, mental and physical tools, and they cross all dimensions. So you could call them secular in that sense. So one of the big things that we wanted to start with, because you had a bit of homework to do, and what we wanted to do is kick it off by getting a bit of feedback from you about how that went. So the key aspects were the insights and some of the lessons. Throw in, the first thing to throw in the chat box though is a word or a statement of how you found that activity. Just do that now.
Not good.
What?
Or bad.
Oh, right.
Yeah. We don't want you to type good,
yeah.
or bad.
Two of the most nondescript words in the English language: interesting and good.
or insights, contemplative.
Nice, Meg. You write copy for a living, don't you? Revealing.
I think what I would like to know is
revealing.
Revealing is great.
It's got a romantic tang to it.
If we look at Louise's answer, and if we look at all those answers, contemplative, really helpful. What was revealed for you? What's something that you discovered or remembered about yourself going through that activity in reflecting upon the past?
Challenging, yeah. Irritated, frustrated, and vulnerable.
Challenging.
Was that Ali or was that James? Irritated, frustrated, and vulnerable. Oh, did he just have his hand up?
Yeah, James, I think did.
Roger.
Something keeps dinging, but I don't know what it is.
Life goes on. Challenging, Benedict Butfield. Nice. Meg.
But I felt more spiritually connected in
previous years. Right, gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
Ali, vulnerable, challenging, awesome. Sorry, I've been driving. Just got home and missed that little bit.
That's okay. What we just said was that we're interested to know what was a specific insight that you received for yourself, or you remembered, or you discovered about yourself by doing that activity that was specifically for Grace, because you missed a little bit. So Beck says that it's insightful. The patterns in the lessons, awesome, and that's exactly what we said yesterday, Louise, is that we wanted you, that exercise is specifically designed for you to allow yourself to see a theme or a pattern that's coming up for you. And James and I discussed discussed it last night, and there's always a pattern there. No matter which area of life it is, there's always a pattern that comes up. Looking at the dislikes gave me direction.
Yeah, which is great. And you did look at it. We've trained ourselves in two ways about questions. Firstly, it's not even that we don't know how to answer a question. We don't even know how to ask a deep question anymore. Think about it. So how many times have you been asked a deep question by someone and you go, oh, I don't know? Or have you asked a person if they could do something or what they think about something and they say, I don't know? When a person says, I don't know, especially to a deep question, they're regressing psychologically to about the age of 4, when they worked out that they could manipulate their parents and everyone else in their surroundings to do everything for them and give them the answer. So at the age of 44, when I say I don't know, I'm regressing 40 years. So I'm not 44 though. So
You're making yourself young.
I'm like, oh, you're right. They could have thought that I was like, anyway, don't worry about it. So the thing,
30.
so the thing is, when I say I don't know, I am disempowering myself straight away, because realistically, a question that is asking you for that type of answer, it can only be answered by you. If someone gives you the answer, that's like guru status. But a true guru won't actually give you answers. They'll just give you questions. The thing is, to the next level is, how did I train myself not even to ask those questions? So that exercise is a great platform template for you to start going, right, if I'm going into 2020 and beyond and I'm wanting to increase my self-awareness comes through personal questioning.
Yeah, totally.
But it's the potency of the question. Why is one of the worst questions we can possibly do. When I was in my throes of depression, post-traumatic stress and suicidal ideation, the worst possible question I could throw around, and by the way, I did it a lot, was why? Why me? Why? It kept me stuck. But the thing is, at a subconscious level, I knew it kept me stuck. And so I was actually using it as a bit of a crutch. So, and Kirst was great support for that. She would just keep reminding me, why? Don't worry about why. Where are you at? Where do you want to go? What's your next step? And no matter, the worst situation or even an awesome situation where you want to take it to the next level, those 3 questions are really awesome because they take you out of the story of the situation. We'll talk about the story in a minute, and they help you get traction.
And everyone who did that activity, you would have had a challenge at some point. You would have experienced the challenge at some point, because actually taking the time and asking those questions is challenging, because we're opening ourselves up. We're going in there and we don't know what we're going to find, especially if we haven't been allowing ourselves to be with it for some time, if we've kind of been suppressing those difficult emotions or whatever. So asking those types of questions can be really challenging. And Grace's answer says that she had a lot more to say about what she didn't love and an overall negative experience of the year, which is great, because it means that you've actually allowed yourself to go there, and rather than that need to find the positive aspects, you've allowed yourself to go, right, what's not working for me? I really want to sit with and be with this aspect of what's not working, because it's then where I'm going to start to find the gold. But if we stay there, if we stay in that experience of what's not working, that's when we fall into the victim mentality. And sometimes that's what it takes for us to be able to move out of it. We need to go deep, 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 deep down in order for us to actually go, I really can't see a light and I just need to surrender. And all of a sudden a hand comes up. And Louise says, one of the most powerful questions I've come across has been, why not? Yeah, nice.
Yeah, nice, like it, love it. So the other thing to do is to go, okay, if I don't know where I'm wanting to go, what don't I want?
Yeah.
And then list it out. And by listing it out, you go, okay, so now I turn 180 degrees. So therefore you're using the dislikes or the don't wants, and you're disconnecting by then reversing your language. And that can often give a person a great starting point. And until you get used to the point of going inside and going, okay, what is my true self, or my king or my queen, or my connection to the divine? What guidance am I getting? What does my true self really want? When you become attuned to asking that question constantly, and if you want to know how to do it, start with the journal. Start with every day, just writing out what does my true self really want, and then let yourself write. It's called what's called stream of consciousness. And initially, if you're anything like me, I'll just speak from my personal experience. Like, I thought that my journal, I had to have the perfect book. It had to be leather bound. I'm not a perfectionist by any means of the imagination.
It had to have the perfect calligraphy.
I had to have the right pen to actually write in it. Then I was worried that my script wouldn't be good enough. And I had to do the calligraphy at the front page so that and then finally, and 6 months, by the way, the book sat on my bedside table and it didn't have a single entry in it. And then one night...
And the calligraphy wasn't finished.
It wasn't finished, yeah. Possible procrastination issue. If you're wondering about procrastination, have a look at your perfectionist tendencies. So the thing is, one night the water burst and all of a sudden I started writing, and Kirsten, had gone well to sleep by the time I finished. And that really just started me. And I felt so much freer and happier when I closed the book and I turned the light out that night. And from then I'll use the journal quite regularly just to write. And so with journaling, don't judge it, just allow it to actually come up, and you can use it really, really well.
Mm. And with those questions again, we in what we're talking about today, asking ourselves those questions and letting ourselves be with that place inside of us that we think is a little bit dark and scary means that we will have more space and have more trust that we can sit with other people that we love in those places as well. So this type of thing, asking, this might seem like a simple exercise, but being able to do this improves our ability to relate to others. And that's been something that's important for a number of people on this course, is how to expand, create, deepen intimacy in a relationship. And whenever you're in conversation or communication with another person, you're in relationship.
So now, just if you manage to find in all the pattern work and the insight work a belief, like a major belief, throw that in the chat box. Let's see what type of beliefs come up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. That's often when we get to the crux of it, as James said yesterday, that's a core wound. What goes in the chat box?
If you picked up any beliefs, so in the work that you did and the insights and the lessons, if you picked up any beliefs that went on for you, that's what we're looking for at the moment in the chat box. So Rhonda, great one. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. Now go back to your wheel of life and actually have a look where those beliefs underpin a lot of your answers in the wheel of life.
Meg says, I like to have control. Perfect. And as you would have remembered in the call yesterday, Meg, we talked about trusting, the relationship between trust and control. And if we don't have trust, then we are attempting to control what's going on outside of us. Mm. So that's an awesome one for you to bring awareness to. I'm not enough. Connection to self on the wheel of life. I will fail.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, that's massive.
There's a progress. So what I recommend is you've got that document too. So you can use that at any point in time you want to reflect on a period of time. For instance, I will go back to first principles in my life pretty much once a quarter, where I'll review my principles and my values. I'll meditate into them. I'll get a deeper connection to them and understanding, etc. And I will throw everything up in the air, like everything that I'm doing currently in the world. I'll throw it all up in the air and see what still lands. Anything that doesn't land has to be dismissed. I have to let go of. And Kirst asked me a great question a couple of years ago. She said, why would you want to do something that you don't want to do? Now, that doesn't mean to say that I don't do something that's hard, because when I sink my teeth into something, and I need tenacity and resolve, that's a process in itself. And I can really put my effort and energy into that. So hard things is not liking. as well. But the other thing is hard for hard's sake, or just working hard because that's the way I've always been told, and I'm actually not worthy for anything else, and I must work hard to get the coin that I have, and et cetera, et cetera. That's just a belief cycle.
Well, that's right, and that's what you're saying there is because the next question is, well, why is it hard?
Yeah.
And so if it's hard, all right, well, the next question that can naturally come from that, well, why is it hard? What is it about it that's hard? And if I'm believing it's hard, then there's probably going to be a misalignment there, and it's not necessarily in this moment. I'm not aligning it with my principles and with my values. So every little stumbling block that we come across, there will be an underpinning causal issue or belief. And as we were talking today, when we've got that belief, it's always attached to a story. That's there's some more.
Yep.
There's some more responses in there. So that belief is always attached to a story that I've told myself. So go back to the simple one of I will fail. So I mean that's a perfect one, considering that we're going to do the success and failure activity tonight. If I fail, okay, I can't take that step because I will fail. All right. So what does failing mean? What and then if I admit that I'm not taking that step because I think I will fail, perfect. Because if I think I will fail, then I can explore what I think failure is. And if I think that failure is a certain thing, so what is it about this particular thing that is failure to me? So can you see that every single step we come up against, we're asking questions, continuing to ask questions to the nth degree, because I want to be over there, but I'm not, because I think I will fail if I take the step to get there. So do I really want to be there? Or is my idea of failure, does that need to be looked at?
Another thing is quite often doing what everyone else tells you you're meant to do and never believing that you're really singing at it, you're really successful at it. Well, half the time it's because you're doing something you're actually not meant to be doing in the first place. You've inherited it from someone else. So that's when we really need to sit and go back to first principles and go, well, am I doing what I'm actually meant to do on the planet? And if you get the resonating answer of no, then, well, that's a big call to action. And a lot of people get no and just run from that answer, which is, the epitome of non-alignment. Just backing up what you just said there, I was working with an AFL player the other day, plays Australian rules football for those who don't follow it. So an elite level athlete and has been playing for a considerable amount of time. So I asked him why he is where he is on the playing field, and he said hard work. Now, the two, it actually turns out hard work is a belief of his. It's not the reason why he is where he is right now. He is where he is right now because of who he is, not hard work. But believing that it was hard work that got him there becomes an addiction to hard work, which interestingly enough ran his body into the ground, creating a substantial amount of string of injuries, which actually decreased his overall performance. So that assumption that hard work got me where I am is an assumption, and it must be critically looked at because it's not a fact. The massive distinction between fact and assumption and belief system is one of the biggest areas where the difference between fact and assumption comes up. So have a look and actually interrogate why you are where you are, or where you've got the results you have, and have a look. If you come up with these answers like hard work, etc., really feel into that. Is that really the truth?
James's answer says he's pushing himself towards change, but at the same time doesn't feel like he has what he needs to make it. So he doesn't feel like he has what it takes to make it. So he causes anger at himself, which is perfect, because that's what we want to go into, because the story and the belief live in the emotional body, and they're always affecting our physical body, as James has just given the perfect example of the body breaking down because of the belief systems that are there. There's a flexibility that's required in the emotional body in order to create a flexibility in the physical body, and it goes both ways. We need to be flexible in our physical body, which helps our emotional body, but at the same time we need to have flexibility with our emotions and our understanding and our awareness to help our energy, our physical body moves that energy. There's one thing that that was mentioned in the chat box was something.
Before you go there,
Yes.
Can you hold that?
Yes.
If you've got a question or anything we've covered so far or that exercise, just while Kirsty gives this really good explanation, just throw it in the chat box now and we'll come to it.
Yeah, we'll come to it. There's something I want to mention, and that is it's been said that something inside me is broken and needs fixing. This is a belief in itself. This is a belief that, so I want you to just be with that for a second. Something inside me is broken and need fixing. I am broken and I need fixing. There's a belief right there, and there's an emotion that's associated. There's probably like a collective of emotions that's associated with the belief that I'm broken and I need fixing. So yes, I'm not in alignment is definitely there, but I'm broken and I need fixing. This is a big one, and it's not an incorrect belief. So because the basis of all of that is that I am wrong, and none of us are wrong. If we were, we wouldn't be here. So there's a huge, huge, huge emotional impact that those beliefs have had. And we've all, I'm sure that every single person on this call has experienced it in their life. And we, at the deepest level, believe we're wrong. Go back to what we talked about yesterday about the impact of religion and whatever religion it is upon our psyche, Christianity specifically for us in the West. We have sinned, we are wrong, and therefore we're stuffed, basically. We live in hell and we're stuffed. We are not wrong.
So what happens, and Kirsty's talking about the original sin, if you haven't figured that out, and a lot of work I've done with Polynesian people when missionary Christianity goes in, they're really, it's really deep in their psyche. They are less than because they sinned against God. So, and just helping them realise, and the demonic God that is used in that, the very judgmental one, that's just a form of belief system. So it's understanding where that hurts you. But the other thing is parents. We've got a lot of unconscious parents out there. We've got some amazing, like my mum is just, if she could, to help me, she would cut off her leg. But at the same time, I don't know how many times she's called me hopeless, useless, and has no understanding what a young person hearing those words actually makes a decision about. Anything that goes after these two words becomes true. I am. So if you at any stage have been called hopeless, useless, a loser, anything like that, and you have made a subconscious decision that you are not enough or you're not worthy, then what's going to happen is you're going to resonate with that information coming at you, and you're going to make a decision deep in here that you are broken. Why? Because two emotions will come up, shame and guilt. Now, these are ugly twin sisters, and I don't know why I gave them the female gender, but emotions are feminine. So they're two bouncers at the door of connecting to your true self, because you can do all the spiritual practice you want, like you can whatever spirituality or religious modality you want, you do everything they tell you. But if you have shame and guilt standing there, they will bounce you off going through the emotional gateway into the spiritual realm every single time. And there's no way that when someone looks you in the eye and say, you're beautiful, you're amazing, that you will believe it.
And so if you recall back to yesterday when James was talking about the belief cycle, and he was talking about subconscious programs and the decisions that we've made, we often made those decisions not even know about ourselves, not even knowing that we made them. So does that mean that our little self was wrong? No, our little self wasn't wrong. Our little self made those decisions to keep me safe. So she made a decision about the way that I am, that I can't do that because I'm going to fail. She made that decision because she didn't want me to be hurt, or she didn't want me to feel sad. So she wasn't wrong in that situation. She believed 100% that she was right. And so if I say that that belief is wrong. What I'm saying is my inner child, that little part, in that beautiful heart, beautiful big hearted being inside of me, I'm saying that she was wrong. And I'm shaming her for the decision that she made. So allowing myself to go, yes, right, I see that I have these beliefs, but do I actually want them anymore? And that's where we are. And Ali talked about that it's okay to give myself permission to love all these emotions because they serve a purpose. And that's where we want to be in that place, because it doesn't matter whether I'm angry. I mean, think about when we were angry as kids. I know if I got angry, well, it was better to be seen and not heard. So if I got angry or raised my voice, I was told to shush, or I was put in a corner, or it wasn't okay to express myself emphatically. And so naturally, I just suppressed my voice. So because if I got angry, then I'd get smacked. So I didn't want to be smacked. So I made a decision that it was not okay for me to use my voice. Now, was I wrong in doing that? No, I wasn't wrong. I was just trying to protect myself. But when I get to an age where I realize that I'm not using my voice and I'm allowing myself to be stomped all over, then I can reassess that belief and go, okay, little self, I know that you made this because you wanted to protect me. I know that you made this decision because you didn't want me to fail, but I'm ready. I know that I've got what it takes to take this next step and just see what might happen.
So what we'll do is we'll take you a bit further and deeper to the second half of the presentation into emotions and all that. But it's a great question. I don't know what to do about it, because you haven't actually had Emotions 101, how to not get emotionally hijacked, given to you in high school or primary school. Now, wouldn't that have been an awesome session to go to? But I'm almost going to guarantee none of us actually would have wanted to go there, because we would have felt ashamed or guilty or whatever. Or socially isolated, because that's just not what you do. You don't talk about emotions in the playground. So the thing is that this is a lot of the work that Kirsten and I do, is helping to educate people in what's called emotional literacy. We do not use the term emotional intelligence. Just feel the word intelligence. Where in your body does it live? Your head. Emotional literacy is, to be literate in a language means I understand the language. So we talk about emotional literacy because emotions are a language unto themselves. But then they're the stepping stone. Emotional literacy is the stepping stone into emotional intimacy. And when we're intimate with emotions, we're in the dance.
And we understand the nuances, and we understand all the little movements and everything that goes with the language. We understand that, and we're intimate with it.
A great case in point is understanding Stoicism. The etymology of the word Stoicism actually comes from the Greek philosophers, the Stoics. Now, the Stoics, well, they believed in oneness and massive connection to nature and everything, but there was another element of their belief system which was all about emotions, and they believed that you'd be above emotions. You could be above emotions and emotionless. Now, unfortunately, our emotionally illiterate society has meant that for us, we've interpreted that by saying, well, that just means you don't feel emotions. So I'm stoic. I'll just build my shoulders, and just think of the word stoic and how we use it. I've got a big barrel chest, and I'll build my shoulders even stronger to take more and more on. Everyone who tries to go for resilience or some form of emotional, a level of emotional sustenance and resilience within that form will always find a breaking point in their own shoulders. And I found that myself. So Stoicism is actually, if just think about it, if I'm to go above something, in other words, I'm going to use another word. If I am to transcend something, I must first walk straight through it. I must go through the emotions to be able to transcend them. So there is no wrong emotion. We use the term contracting and expanding emotions. And I'll show you a diagram in a minute to explain this in some detail. But the big thing is when we realize that if you want to unlock a belief, you must feel the emotion underpinning the story. So let's go back to, while you're getting
that, Meg's just asked a question about there's some spaces that she hasn't think of anything on the don't like side. Have I not thought enough about it, or is this a good sign? So what I would say, Meg, is what do you think? And secondly, you'll know when you go back and you look at them, and you, after this call, you allow yourself to just sit with it again. You'll know if, well, am I just avoiding the darkness here, or am I actually in a space where I know that that's been all good this time? So it's, our psyche is a funny thing, and our soul already knows what's going to happen. But our psyche will bring these things up when they're ready to be brought up. We talked about yesterday, Louise articulated it beautifully, like the layers of an onion. There's always going to be things for us to be able to improve upon, to allow ourselves to expand and ascend in this lifetime. But we'll only bring them up when we're ready to deal with them. So if I look at something and I go, right, when I'm looking at this particular part of my life, my relationship, for example, if I'm really happy with where I am in my relationship right now, and I don't want to rock the boat or go any deeper right now, then I'm not going to find anything that's difficult for me. I'm not going to find anything that I didn't like. But if there's something inside of me that's going, I know that I can step up, I know that I can do something more, then I'm probably going to find something that I find I haven't liked about that. Would you agree with that?
Totally.
So that's the question to you, Meg. Is it a good thing, or is it that I haven't given it enough attention? When you go back to it, you will know the answer.
The answer's in the feeling. So go back and reread and ask myself that question.
Yeah.
Am I answering truthfully, and feel the answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's a great question.
It's a beautiful question.
Because, you're probably not the only person who thought that as well. And yeah. I know I've certainly thought that before as well. When I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, didn't like, and I'm going, I can't really find anything. And when I feel in my heart, what do I feel in my heart? Yeah, actually that's true for me. There was nothing that I didn't really like, because I feel like I'm in a really, really awesome space with that right now.
The other thing is to use, to realise that there'll be certain areas of your life, go back to the wheel of life, there'll be certain areas of your life which are singing and others that aren't so singing. So when you go to an answer from the not singing so much category, your dislikes will be like really, whereas when you're singing in life, sometimes your dislikes will actually be good. But you're going from good to great.
Yeah.
So to go from good to great, you still got to let go of what got you to good, because it only got you to good. And that can quite often confuse people. Just because you dislike it doesn't mean to say it's like really negative and cataclysmic. It's something that you necessarily want to improve on before taking the next step.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing that you dislike it. And go back to what we said before. If I'm disliking it, then it means I actually want it to be better. So, yeah.
Awesome. So the thing I'm going to share, the screen I'm going to share now, just a quick reminder of yesterday's, that one there, yesterday's perception cycle. And what you'll remember here, if I can move everyone out of the way, this part here. So everything comes in and then we put meaning on it. And then the following thing is the emotion. And it's really important to understand that step, because the belief occurred at a young person, generally at below the age of 7. And between all this, I mentioned subconscious programs. You have 60,000 subconscious programs in you at the age of an adult. It's said that 45,000 of those 60,000 are in your subconscious by the age of 7. I'm actually suggesting it's by the age of 3. And the reason why I say 3 is because of all the in utero discoveries that mums and dads that are in tune with their babies have always known. But science is now having the ability to measure a lot of the impact that things actually occur in the babies in utero and the developmental results to the fetus. So it's really important to understand that the meaning can be attached when when realistically you're not that adept at the world. You don't understand how the world even works yet, and yet you've still made a decision about yourself in this world itself. And one of the things that we do then is we attach this emotion to it. So your subconscious has a language, images and emotions. Images is 5 sensories: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. And linked to that is an emotion, positive, negative, or neutral. So if we don't understand that, then all we'll do is we'll look at the story, which is 5 sensory story. And that's the mental description or the mental movie that will actually play within our mind. And we'll completely miss what's attached to it, which is the positive, negative, or neutral feeling. Now, neutral, cool. Positive, negative, the further you get away on the scale between more and more positive or more and more negative, the more the memory will actually embed itself in your subconscious mind. And therefore also, the more that you will be, that memory will be easy to access. So when you start doing a lot of deep work and releasing that emotion, what you're going to find is the meanings get the ability to change it. And I'll explain how the functionality of that works in a minute. But the other thing is the story gets less and less tang to it, less and less powerful.
Doesn't have as much hold.
Doesn't have as much hold. Now, you already know this because if you've ever been to a family reunion or a Christmas party and someone in the family is starting to recall something from your childhood with you, and they're saying all these things about it, you go, hold on a minute, and scratching your head, that's not how it happened at all. That's not how I remember it. Because 2 people can see exactly the same situation and come away with different beliefs. Matter of fact, neuroscience is demonstrating that your memory of a situation is created in the moment, right now. And it is based on your emotional situation in the moment. And also now cellular biologists are proving what ancient Chinese and the ancient Vedas knew before we have in the 21st century, that your emotions are held at a cellular level, at a vibrational level. So in this moment, if I have a lot of emotional toxicity or a series of major belief systems that hold shame and guilt, for instance, with me, then I will be more liable to create a situation where I see something in front of my face and I will link it back to a childhood memory that I'm not enough or I'm not worthy. And I'll go back to those feelings. I'll feel triggered. I'll feel embarrassed. I'll feel that person's an asshole or whatever. And that obviously, especially in the festive season, so often happens, but it's not necessarily, what we actually want to occur as well.
Sorry, I'm just being...
That's all right. Anything you want to add to that? I was just taking a breath.
When you were talking about the triggers, so in this age of psychological awareness and lots of, we see it with our young people. Often they'll use even our girls with their friends that they've hung out with have used the words, I'm triggered by this. And being triggered means that you're allowing yourself to be affected by what's going on outside. That's not dealing with the emotional body. It's the same as confusion and anxiety. If I'm feeling confused or I'm feeling anxious, they're not actually emotions. If I'm triggered, that's not actually an emotion, and it's actually not going to a deep level. It's not allowing ourselves to interact with that emotional body, which is the gateway between our spirit and our physical body.
Now, some of you will have some form of counselling or psychological intervention, which people have mentioned trigger avoidance to you. In other words, find out what's triggering you and create an environment where you're not triggered. Good luck. If anyone has been in a place, and a really bad place in their life, that means cotton wool yourself from life. That's not a way to live. Matter of fact, the medicine is in the wound. So when I get triggered, I salivate nowadays. Why do I salivate? Because I know that that's my time for personal growth. That's my time to go in, do some deep healing and take myself to the next level. Because I have the skills to be able to do that, including work with a dog who really wants to be involved. Good on you, Bailey. So how do we work with this? And Kirst made a really great point. Right now in society, there's a lot of stigma about emotions, and people are understanding we've got to start feeling emotions, which is an awesome first step. The problem is we're not emotionally literate. So it's like everyone wants to talk in English, but no one actually understands English. Or everyone wants to talk in Spanish, but we're still talking in English. So we've got to do a bit of training, like language training, to actually understand what these things are.
The word triggered, for instance.
Beautiful.
You know, it's having the awareness that something that's happened has created an emotion inside of me, but it's still based in victim consciousness. It's still blaming something outside of me for causing that within me, rather than taking responsibility and saying, I feel. I language is the most powerful language that we can use. I feel angry right now because blah, blah, blah. You triggered me is complete blaming language. You made me feel, complete blaming language. I'm not taking responsibility for the emotion that I'm choosing to feel in this moment. Incredibly powerful relationship.
So there was the situation in there. I'd been back from Iraq less than 6 months. I'd already, at a subconscious level, chosen to develop post-traumatic stress. My family were walking around on eggshells in my house, and things weren't. But at work, I was excelling. So the problem with all that was that I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know what I was feeling. I got home from work one day. I'm standing in the kitchen in Darwin in a really nice home. It's something I could have been really grateful for. Kirst said, "How'd your day go?" And the way I responded, she said, "Why are you angry?" And I looked at her and I drilled her head to the wall with my eyes, and then smashed my fist into the cupboard and said, "I'm not fucking angry." Now, if you think about it, that's quite funny. Because, no, James, you're not angry, man. You just lost it. Yeah. But at the same time, I had a 2-year-old daughter no more than 2 meters from me. And her eyes were like dinner plates. So I didn't even know I was in rage. I didn't know what anger was. So what has happened? Now, Kirsty did not react to that. She said, "That's your stuff. You got to get help to work that out." Now, back then, it took me another 12 months to actually wake up to the fact that I needed to get help and to do something about it. Resistance, I thought everything in life was singing when I was at work. It's just my family should toe the party line so that everything happens the same as at work. I was running to work. I was a refugee because I was really good at it and I could suppress all the crap that was inside. I get home to my safe abode and the pressure cooker would come off. So what happens though, Kirsty didn't resonate with the anger inside. If you're triggered, what's happening is anger or any emotion is a vibration. So emotion has been put out. A vibration has been put out by a source. In other words, in a situation, probably a person. And what's happened is that vibration has hit you in the same bucket as what was put out. So you vibrated. You've what's called entrained and hit resonance, if you understand anything about harmonics. So when something hits resonance, the amplitude immediately increases. The amplitude's where the power of the wave is, which is why two people can all of a sudden go from an intense conversation to an all-out argument. Why? In an exponential way. Both things have the emotion is sitting in both people. And what's happened is it's flared up. Now, if someone does something or a situation doesn't go right, then the person who's getting triggered immediately associates that with one of the meanings that they've put about their self-identity, and therefore has the explosion. There's no necessary gap between the impulse to feel an emotion and the feeling itself. Why? Because there's so much emotional toxicity in their system. So how do I not get into arguments? You release the emotional toxicity to come to balance, to be able to be in a place of stillness when a person brings up a hard conversation, and you can look through the conversation, through the emotion in the conversation to go, what is really being said in this conversation? What is really, really the desire or the objective that this person's brought this up? Oh, I see it. They want validation. So why do I need to react in any certain particular way? Because this conversation is about them. I don't need to react. How could I even see that in a conversation? Because I'm not emotionally triggered. So the triggering is the person's responsibility. If you want to talk about personal responsibility, understanding emotion is the heartland of being able to take personal ownership and personal responsibility.
There's a well-known and well-versed, especially in the last 12 months, 2 years, discussion in society between empaths and narcissists. So relationships between empaths and narcissists. That is still a surface conversation, and it's still based in victim consciousness. In my experience and the work that I've done and what I've seen of other people, often in a relationship like that, you've got one person who is the empath, who is a person who is fully prepared to take responsibility for the feeling. There's another person who's not as prepared to take responsibility for the feeling, and therefore will project onto the other person. And so because the empath is aware of the emotion but hasn't necessarily cleared it and hasn't necessarily got the intimacy with what's going on for them, they will then take responsibility for that, and that then it contributes to the fuzziness of their emotional body. It's only when...
And the confusion of their mental body.
And the confusion of their mental body, and the anxiety and self-doubt and all of the beliefs, the underlying beliefs come up. So it's only when we can do what James is saying, which is get more in touch with the emotion of what's going on and what's the purpose of this for me, that we can move beyond the empath narcissist conversation, because it's actually something that's still keeping us stuck in this victim consciousness.
Yeah. Now, if people talk to you about narcissism, they're talking about victim consciousness. So one of the other things, James has made an absolute beautiful point, and that is in the understanding that the person who is actually saying I am wrong in any argument is me. Does not matter what the other person has actually said. Does not matter. They could be a statue and I would still argue at them if I thought they were looking at me the wrong way, which meant that I'm wrong. And I'll take you. Or they could be the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, and they've not actually said you're wrong at all. You've just interpreted what they've said as making you wrong. Or they might have emphatically said you're not wrong, and you agree with them through your mouth, but deep down you have no resonance with that whatsoever. It's like bullshit. Bullshit. You don't know me. You got nothing.
You don't know what I've done.
You don't know what I've done. Yeah. That's a massive one. You don't know what I've done. But that is such a generalization. What it is designed to do is keep you stuck. It is the biggest palm I could possibly give a person. You don't know what I've done. And I don't know how many times people have actually given that to me when they've actually come to me and asked them for help. So my first question is, okay, so what have you done? And when they're able to share and completely get it out, and I'll ask them questions, and I'll say words like awesome to them, as I mentioned yesterday. Why? And they're looking at me weirdly. Like, I had this conversation with a guy who he was in domestic violence. He had been a perpetrator of domestic violence. And when he told me all about it, my words were awesome. And he's looking at me going, that's probably not awesome, man. I said, no, it's awesome that you're owning this shit, man. Because not too many people have the courage to be as open as you are right now. And because you are allowing yourself to be open, we can work with that. We can't work with the denial. Don't even notice I am lying. Contraction of statement. Denial. Don't even notice I am lying. So such a beautiful point that you make, James. And to understand that means that if I'm watching Kirsty get triggered at something that I've said, I can hold space. And this is the element to any decent relationship, becomes the ability to hold space. Holding space is actually generally a masculine element. Yeah. And it is the protector as opposed to the provider or anything like this. This is the true misunderstanding of the masculine feminine, when people go, I need to protect you. No. In the really connected masculine simply holds space for the feminine to actually allow herself to truly connect into the wild ways that she is. And when we say wild ways that she is, emotion is feminine. It's our feminine aspect. So men are so often disconnected from their feminine aspect and think it's puffy, sissy, crap, gay, whatever you want, whatever derogatory term you want to use. Society has made a whole series of conscious decisions, or subconscious decisions, I should say, which stop me from going into that space. It can take a woman, case in point, right in front of you, who to hold space to allow me, in this case, to express my emotions in a safe place. Now,
you guys are probably already aware, but I'm going to state something that's fairly obvious, is that we're pretty much 50-50, whether we're a man or a woman, we're pretty much 50-50 masculine and feminine.
A male, like a heterosexual male, is 51% masculine, 49% feminine. They are energies within us that are associated to personality traits and lots of other different things. A woman, a heterosexual woman, is 51% feminine, 49% masculine. And yes, that swings, the energy swings in a homosexual person. And you'll see this in a gay relationship where someone will say they wear the pants in the relationship. They're talking about masculine energy. Matter of fact, it's not just gay relationships. You know, so often, Kirsty wore the pants in our relationship for quite some time. Because I was in depression, I couldn't step into my masculinity, which is all about certainty of direction, decision-making, these type of qualities. I didn't have that ability. Why? I had too much emotional toxicity and zero self-trust. So Kirsty had to do that. And what that did is create resentment in Kirsty because she's having to go to something in a relationship. So but when I actually did the healing and then stepped up and started to pull my own pants on, it was a bit of Clash of the Titanic when I went back into making these decisions and stuff. And Kirsty actually had this Clash of the Titans. So what it was is releasing the control to go back and feel safe in her feminine. It was actually trusting that the masculine in her life was capable of holding protective space for her to be the person that she truly is. And that is a very, very short summation of the divine dance of the masculine and feminine. We won't go down too much there. But by understanding this in the dynamics in a relationship, we start to realize what is projection and what is ownership. I have to own my beliefs and my feelings in my relationship. And if I project them onto Kirsty as believing she has to have the same beliefs, then I'm actually attempting to control Kirsty. And well, if you know Kirsty, good luck on that one. It took me a while to figure out that lesson. But anyway, it's the same in any relationship. If I'm trying to control someone, it means that I need you to be this way for me to be happy. Am I actually allowing Kirsty to grow into the person that she truly wants to and is potentially of? No, I'm not. I'm holding her stuck. That's not love. That's control. And that's fear. Control based out of fear. So,
and this is any relationship, not just between a man and a woman.
Exactly.
The classic relationship is parents and children.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
And not just children, adult children, elderly, and adult humans.
And sometimes you as an adult can be more of an adult than your parent, a grandparent. I've watched a 7-year-old be more emotionally mature than a 63-year-old and was quite fascinated by the whole dialogue. But no, I did not jump in. Why? Because the 7-year-old must understand how to actually, she must train herself to be able to interact with all different emotional literacies. And what I was there, though, was afterwards to have a conversation with her to make sure that she picked up the right lessons, not the wrong lessons, that she didn't associate some things that were said in that conversation to the meaning of who she was, to cleanse the conversation so that she could understand it. I didn't step between the two of them because otherwise that's demonstrating to her she will always need a protector. My role as a father is to hold space for my daughters so that they know how amazing they are and allow them to soar and to get the hell out of their way. And that's probably been my biggest lesson, especially someone who's always wanted to jump in and fix stuff and be there for people, be of service to people. Understanding how to truly be of service sometimes is to get the hell out of someone's way. And anyone who's worked with me or Kirst will understand that that's how we work, is we're there for you. I'll sit beside you for as long as you need me to sit beside you. But, I mean, you're the person who's got to do the work.
So let's go into a deeper explanation of the emotions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, we've got to preach it, James said. I didn't read the rest, man. I just read preach it.
As a tangent, we talked about at the beginning of the conversation about irritators today. Having this at this time of the day has been an interesting experience of dealing with dogs and young people and possible chickens inside the house. So if anyone inside our house is listening to this call right now, if you just want to check if there's a chicken in the house, that would be awesome.
5-month-old dog hasn't exercised. It's the only thing. Okay, so I've totally gone to the wrong screen. No, have you got the results screen up? Benny, just look at me and nod. James has. Awesome. Yes, awesome. Thanks. So what we want to do is, you know how I mentioned that Emotions 101, how not to get emotionally hijacked right now, or actually half an hour ago? What I want to do is give you this lesson in a very short amount of time. We can only give you so much. This is really an introduction to open you to, taking it to the next level within yourself.
When we don't know this stuff, we are susceptible to our hijacking emotional patterns that come as a result of our beliefs. So, for instance, needing immediate gratification, needing external approval,
fear of missing out,
running away from relationships or things that we think are important to us. They're just
subjugating myself
to others because I need to be liked. These are the things that we will do. These are emotional patterns that come as a result of beliefs and decisions that we've made as a little child in order to keep ourselves safe. These emotional patterns come unconsciously. So the reason that we're giving you this is because you want clarity and confidence, and this is about moving more powerfully. When we know this stuff, we can move more powerfully because we're not going to be as hijacked, and we're going to notice more freely, if we choose to, those patterns when they come up.
Beautiful description, Doris. So what you're going to find, and I've referred you back to this a few times as your wheel of life. So what you can have a look at is where you've been contracted in your wheel of life. Have a look now at the underpinning beliefs that are causing that contraction. Where you've expanded in your wheel of life, have a look at the underpinning beliefs which have caused that expansion. Remember, a belief will simply just take you in a direction. The direction is what we judge as good or bad. Because one direction for one person will be really good, but it won't be the direction that another person wants to go on. So we'll actually have issues with that. Now, going into this, understanding emotions it's really it's I suppose fundamental, and it was the thing that enabled me to get from where I was to where I am now, and that has opened so much up. A lot of people are quite confused about what is an emotion. There are actually limited amount of emotions. I know in the psychological world there's an incredible amount of debate as to what is an emotion and what is not. Some people are saying there's hundreds of emotions, others saying about 36. Realistically, as far as primary emotions go, just like primary colours, there's realistically only about 6 emotions. And what we do is they don't turn up on their own though. They don't come knocking on the door just on their lonesome. They come with a whole plethora of other emotions, hence the term mixed feelings, mixed emotion. And sometimes when you're not attuned to the varying types of emotions, then you'll go, oh, I'm angry, when actually you're sad. Or I'm angry and I'm actually really scared. Or I'm feeling angry, but no, I'm feeling guilty. So I use anger, keep coming back to anger, because anger is such an awesome emotion. When you truly understand it and when you respect it and you allow it to respect you, that's the really, really key thing. So we don't talk about anger management. In my humble opinion, there's no such thing as anger management. It's going right into the emotion, and the emotion is the trigger. It's the source of the trigger. And it is also the source of the medicine and the lesson. And I'll get there later.
Anger management is actually, if you look at the words of anger management, managing our anger, it's still based in that paradigm of it's wrong to feel anger.
Yep. And it's all about control.
And control.
It's a little bit funny because you're missing the source of what anger is and what it's all about. So going from there, realistically, there are 6 emotions: anger, sadness, fear. Love, peace, and joy, anger, sadness, and fear. Now, we're working with not only...
very simplistic, by the way. Very simplistic.
So we're not only working with our understanding of what these emotions are, we're also working with societal's labeling of them. So if we were to put them into two groups, you'd see straight away society puts the line between joy and anger. And what we'll do to the top three is give them a tick, and to the bottom three we'll say no, not so good. So we're allowed to express the top three, but we have to suppress the bottom three. Got asked to go into a construction site because the HR department had lost connection to their workers. So they wanted me to be like an icebreaker to get them back in. And I talked to the foreman, to the supervisors, and to the project manager, and they all said, no anger on our site. And I walked in, the passive aggressiveness was like rancid. Like the backstabbing was just incredible. The sarcasm, which is based out of anger, was like rampant. So all this stuff, all anger was just swept under the carpet. It was right there in everyone's faces, but you're not allowed to acknowledge it because we had a zero tolerance policy. Zero tolerance policies are based in control and do not get to the causal issue. When you don't get to the causal issue, you're pushing against something, and James beautifully described pushing against something before, then it's right in your face. So what I strongly recommend is, if you want to have an actual zero tolerance policy, dismiss the idea of being zero tolerance and go and be completely tolerant and understand the actual emotion that's at the heart of the issue. Go through that and equip your workplace or your people or your family with the skills and the literacy to be able to deal with that. Then, funnily enough, you'll transcend it as opposed to be abused by it.
Zero tolerance policies actually create guilt and shame.
Exactly.
You can imagine, because if there's a zero tolerance for anger and I'm feeling angry about something, I'm going to feel guilty that I feel angry, or I'm going to feel ashamed that I've got this turbulence inside of me.
So speaking of guilt and shame, there's two emotions that aren't there, and that's where they are. Sorry about the Phoenix cutting off guilt, but you can see that that's guilt.
Burning guilt.
Burning guilt. That's what I did. Burning. Because that is. It's what guilt's all about. Authority, and we'll talk about guilt in a minute. And shame. Guilt's not an emotion. It's actually anger turned against self for feeling like we've done or haven't done something. Just think about it. I feel guilty because I did this, or I feel guilty because I didn't do that. So guilt's this whole point about making myself wrong. Now, all these emotions, the five below the line, are the ones we suppress. And I'll explain to you in a minute how each one of them is golden, absolutely golden. When we understand, one, when the emotion is coming up, and two, reading the message of it. So what happens though, and generally with an emotion, is we'll go through the cycle of feeling it. The energy will rise quickly with an intensity, and then over time will dissipate, as long as the natural flow of the emotion is not disrupted in any way. Emotion is a contraction of a statement, energy in motion. That's what the word means. So energy in motion, if I stall that motion or I disrupt that motion in any way, then what's going to happen, it has to go somewhere. And what happens is it goes actually at a cellular level within you that causes a disruption in your emotional body, or just causes mental confusion. You'll notice anxiety wasn't one of those emotions. This is because anxiety is not an emotion. Anxiety is a mental state which is often associated with confusion and power because of heightened emotion. So it's emotion which is going through the roof, causing all your sympathetic nervous system to go ballistic, and your hormonal and endocrine system to actually go ballistic correspondingly as well. So that's why when your sympathetic nervous system goes ballistic, your blood gets sucked from your frontal or neocortex, which is your rational and reasoning mind. So when you get anxiety, you really struggle to actually make a decision. So understanding that blood is actually being pumped into the other regions of your body because of what you're expecting. In other words, you're going to be threatened, you're feeling shame or something like that, means that, okay, that's the emotion I'm feeling. I'm not aware of the emotion, especially if you get a lot of anxiety attacks or you get hit by confusion. If you've got migraines, you're using the wrong piece of equipment for the wrong job. Migraines come from overstimulus of the brain and the mind attempting to move through a situation. You need to take stock, go in to do some emotional clearance and some meditative work, and actually go back to getting clear on what in this moment is giving me a headache. Ask that one question. what about my life in this moment is giving me a headache?
You might not get an answer straight away.
Especially if you haven't asked that question before.
Yeah, you might not get an answer straight away, but what you're doing is you're opening a channel that hasn't been opened before. And you will eventually receive an answer, because there'll be a pattern in there, as we talked about at the very beginning. There'll be a pattern in there that will come up. Migraines will happen as a result of a pattern.
Goes to that. If you bottle your emotions up for any period of time, they'll come out in a different way. So how does that work? Well, we get to a certain point of intensity with the emotion and we just say, enough, I can't deal with this anymore. So we'll attempt to suppress the emotion. How we'll do that? We'll do that in one of three ways: detachment, distraction, or mood altering. It just means we remove ourselves from the situation and remove ourselves from the emotion. Distraction means I'll do something to mean that I don't feel the emotion. Mood altering means I'll generally take an illicit substance, or a form of substance, to suppress the actual emotional turbulence. Now, anyone who's been aware around alcohol, marijuana, or nicotine before will understand they're actually emotional suppressants. Nicotine suppresses anger. You already know this, because if you took smokes off a smoker, what do? They go ballistic. So if you wanted to ask that really good looking lady down the other end of the bar, for her telephone number and whether or not she actually wanted to go out with you, well then what do? Throw down a bit of Dutch courage, a bit of alcohol. It suppresses the fear. The marijuana gives you the high, gives you the joy. It's suppressing sadness. There is an incredible amount of young people currently on marijuana. What it's doing is suppressing the sadness they have in their heart. That's why it's so often around depressed people. Marijuana hangs and loiters around depressed people. Depression is not an emotion. It is the result of feeling powerless and exhausted. So it's a mental state. It's actually not just a mental state, that's wrong. It's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state.
It's all of them.
It's all of them. Now, are these things good or bad? The simple answer is no. Because if you're at a work site and all of a sudden you've got a whole heap of shame coming up because you just remembered something that you hadn't done, but you've got a really important job to do, then use a suppressive technique like detachment or distraction and allow yourself to let go of the shame for this moment. But the big thing is, if you don't come back to it and deal with it, then it's the anchor. Shame and guilt are like anchors holding you stuck in a situation. They're very, very dense emotions, and I'll show you this in a minute. So these are not good or bad. As a matter of fact, the more you start to understand there is no good or bad, the easier life becomes, because then you're opening yourself up to asking these questions we're actually talking about.
Remember the good and the bad. As we talked about yesterday, the right and the wrong. The good and the bad keep us stuck in that story. They keep us stuck in the story of the shift between the poles, the darkness and the light, the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, whatever you want to call it, the right and the wrong. It's a story. And to move beyond this, we stand up here and we allow ourselves to look down on it and see what's going on, see both the polarities, so that we can maintain, so that we can find a place of greater balance.
So a great little technique that we'll take you through right now is, just imagine you're coming to a place where you've got a lot going on in your world and you want to get something done. So just allow yourself to become still. And bring your attention, if you can, just allow your eyes to close. And bring your attention to your breath. And now find yourself sitting in the center of your mind. And as you do, you may notice there's quite a bit of clutter around. Clutter being thoughts, judgments, everything. And the way you might be able to see this clutter is by boxes or garbage bags or whatever. Now, look to the left. This is the door to the past. There is a door there, and allow yourself to open it up. Take everything that belongs in the past and just push it out the door. And now close the door, acknowledge the door, and let the door go. And now come back to center of mind. And as you do, you may notice that there's a lot more clutter still. This stuff belongs to the future. Look to the right and you'll notice the door to the future. So just open the door, take everything else out, and push it out the door. You might even want to just look behind the door as well and push it all out. Once it's all out, close the door, acknowledge the door, and then let the door go. And bring yourself back to center of mind. Breathing in through your nose, holding slightly at the top. And then as you breathe out, just allow yourself to let go. And see how your mind is right now. And bring yourself back into the room, feeling where you're sitting. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Just who found that a good mind clearing activity? Feel better, feel clearer? Yeah, we've got a few people. A few people still seem a bit blissed out. Okay, that's awesome. I like seeing bliss moments. It's cool. So that's a really, really simple technique. I'll break it down for you. I sat in the center of my mind. I breathed and I allowed myself to acknowledge the clutter. And I feel it and I just picture it in a certain way. So to the left is my past. And psychologically, your left is the past and the right is the future. It actually has a lot to do with the way we write and the way our mind works. Interestingly enough, scripts that go backwards, it's the opposite within the mind. But for us, just open the door to the past and put everything through it and then close. And it's really important to acknowledge the door because all that stuff is real to us at some moment in time, and just let the door go and come back to center of mind. And then just again, allow yourself to tune in, and there will still be stuff there because stuff that's not in the past is in the future. So go to the right, open the door, push everything through, close the door, come back to center of mind and breathe. And it's really, really simple. And when you get good at it and you get proficient, then it literally takes only a matter of seconds to do. I mean, realistically, that took me probably 2 minutes to take you through, but you can be doing that in 10 to 15 seconds very easily. All it is in training to your breath, acknowledging it, and then letting it go through varying aspects. So, awesome. Moving right along then, what we want to talk to you about is I'm going to give you an exercise that you to reflect on over the next 24 hours. Have a look at these emotions: love, peace, joy, anger, sadness, and fear. And are these emotions, are the channels for you expressing these emotions open? A great example is, have a think about the expression of joy. You're allowed to express it to a certain degree, but if you get overexcited, I'm going to guarantee someone in your life has ticked you off before and said, stop getting overexcited.
Or don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. All these different things, they'll tell you about joy, and you are saying that I'm only allowed to have this much joy.
Don't get too excited because something might go wrong.
Something might go wrong. And funnily enough, what you're doing psychologically when you say that to a person is you are seeding them now with the egg that something will go wrong. That's how the mind works. Don't think of a green frog. Don't think of a green frog. What is currently bouncing between your ears? A green frog. So what it's called suggestibility. So when you're talking to someone, be very aware of the language you're utilizing because of suggestibility. When you're talking to young people, how do we get out of the young person's way? Is we actually start to remove all suggested language, unless you want them to eat their dinner on time. So have a look at, are these channels open? And as well, anger, sadness, and fear. Shame and guilt. I haven't put shame and guilt there as well, but anger, sadness, fear, shame, and guilt. And a great question to ask that we'll often ask people during, the master's program is having a look at the role models you've had in your life that are really pivotal and the way they've gone into the emotion. Because when you do that, you'll actually get a pattern starting to realize the decisions that you've made about yourself and these emotions.
One thing I want to say as well is that if you suffer a fair bit of anxiety, you might think that your fear channel is quite open. But I'm going to ask you to have a look at that, because if you're experiencing anxiety, there's a strong likelihood that you're not allowing yourself to feel the fear that's going on for you. You're actually still trying to hold it at bay and trying to run away from it.
So with anxiety, one of the first things we do helping people with that is to get them to welcome it, is to allow themselves space to allow the anxiety to come on, to come fully on. And if I have time today, I want to take you through another technique which can possibly help with that. So, So have a look at those emotions and see, are they open? And then the question obviously is, if they're not open, what do you want to do about it? And if love is not as open as it possibly could be, what could I do? A great little example that I often give blokes is, if they've got a partner, is do 3 things in 24 hours, generally small, that your partner doesn't know about, but do them for her. And don't expect any recognition or any gratitude, because the gratitude and the receiving comes in the giving. And it's just like, if I see Kirsty's water bottle over here before we go to bed, I know she wants the water with her at night. So I'll fill the water bottle and I'll put it on a bedside table. Or her headset. I'm giving away my secrets now. Bugger. Or the headset, she uses for meditation. If it's over here, then I'll grab it and put it on a bedside table. And I'm not looking for any recognition. I am receiving in that because I'm actually getting a little buzz about thinking about what she needs and what she's going on for. So 3 things in a 24-hour period for a loved one that you're not expecting any gratitude for. It's all about receiving and the giving.
And if you look at what we've already done just in the last 2 days, go back to the Wheel of Life and have a look at the areas of the Wheel of Life, and go back to the exercise that we did yesterday. And if there's stuff there that is not where you want it to be, then ask specifically about these emotions. And okay, so you're asking the question, which channels are open, but the answers that you've already received in both the Wheel of Life and the reflections, 2019 reflections that you did last night or yesterday, the answers will be there for you.
Awesome. I just want to, this diagram is actually a diagram of what's called heart entrainment, or the heart rate variance of a couple that are entrained, a husband and wife. And you can actually see it's done whilst they're actually sleeping, and you can see how their hearts naturally, or the heart rate variance, naturally what's called entrain with each other. So it's a really, really powerful thing. And this one is of a dog. And you can actually see here, Josh and Mabel, the dog, is in separate rooms. And you can see the dog's level of actual heart rate. And then you can see Josh's. And then when he enters the room, look what happens to them both. And then when Josh leaves the room, again, look what happens. So that's just demonstrating this is not just human to human interaction. It's special interaction between sentient beings. And I won't go into your heart at the moment, but Rene Descartes, one of the French philosophers that gave us the understanding of the heart and how it works, did such a beautiful job way back in, I think, the 15th century, 15th, 16th century, when he was trying to explain it as a pump to laymen. But it's such a disservice now in understanding what it is. Your heart is the largest electromagnetic producer in your body, produces 5,000 times more electromagnetic energy than your brain. So understanding your heart is far more detailed than we're given credit for. No, it cannot produce the pressure that is required to pump your blood through every single capillary in your body. There are other forces at play. It's instrumental in that pressure and in that rhythm, in that cycle, in that system, but there are other forces at play that are required. So when you understand what the heart is, and if you want to take your relationship to the new level, really start having a look at heart entrainment, etc. So channels are open, anger, sadness, and fear. Cool. Grace asked before about beliefs, how to get out of it. Well, part of the thing is when you're letting go of a belief, often that will entail literally a forgiveness of self aspect. So we'll often hold a belief in place because it allows us to not to actually get out of the belief system that we have. So when we get that, when we realize how to move through forgiveness, and it's the emotional component is really heavy in this, then we allow ourselves to come to a place of freedom. Does that make sense, Grace? If you had said yes, then exactly, because you don't even know what I'm going to say yet. No, it's just testing. Seeing if you're listening. So let's just take you through. Now, I've made this clinical in my understanding of how this all works. And this came from personal and professional experience. It's not as clinical. Okay, anyone who believes that releasing emotions is so pure and blissful and clean is the word I was looking for. Anyone who believes releasing emotion is clean are really interested in the emotion that they've been releasing. It is raw, it is messy, and it can be turbulent. And that's actually, in the beauty of it, it's really, really cool. There's a couple of people that have been chatting.
Chats, yeah.
So, 2 texts. I just want to make sure we're getting with people with chats.
Oh, okay.
Had been a sinner's child.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Awesome. What about sugar and food? That's a beautiful point, Annabelle. However, I'm not exactly too sure which one you're talking about. Your gut is your third brain. So if you're having a look at depression, any form of trauma, any form of mental and emotional instability, also have a look at your diet. If you don't have a clean diet, then what will happen is your gut health will have a direct correlation to your endocrine health, your hormonal health, and your brain function. So it's really, really important to allow yourself to have a look, and we call that the physical element. That physical element of what you're ingesting is so pivotal to actually have a look at. You can go right down water science and everything like that. Go have a look. Start looking at the back of the packets, and if you're seeing high concentrated high fructose corn syrup, that stuff is a brain fizzer. And there's a lot of stuff on the web about and it's the standard preservative is high fructose corn syrup. It's the standard preservative. So, and that's the reason why things can be packaged on supermarket shelves for so long. But the thing is, an overconsumption of that stuff causes a lot of disrupted mental and brain activity, as well as obviously gut health.
Well, yeah, and it's interrupting your endocrine system. So it's interrupting your body's slow-moving, natural balancing system. Annabelle has said that in regard to avoid feeling emotion. So I think she said it in relation to mood altering.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at sugar, you look at ice cream. Anyone gone to, feeling crap, gone to get a tub of ice cream and just sat there eating it? Anyone just said, bugger this, let's just go and have a beer? All that stuff is actually suppressant. And so food is one of the food, sex, work, all these things are actually forms of suppressants as well. If you want to develop a deepened sense of relationship, you have to have a look at the sexual dimension of your relationship. Because if you don't, you won't necessarily understand where and when you're projecting or you are distracting yourself from true communication, heart-centered communication. Yeah, I don't actually know how to do that.
I can see the chat box. Can you guys see the chat box?
Hold on.
No.
Got no idea. Can you guys see the chat box?
Yeah, they can see it in the middle of the screen.
I think we all.
Move out of chat boxes independently.
Well, there you go. So that means I can move mine.
Yeah. So remove the chat box.
Can you stop clicking my slides though? Oh, look at that. That's because I
take it out of the full screen.
That's actually what I do.
Look at that.
See, I can figure things out.
Okay.
Awesome. Get up there. So what I mean by, let's just go back a couple of slides. So the first aspect of forgiveness is to reframe the perception you have of a situational person, because the way you're looking at the situation of the person is the thing that's fueling the emotion. It's like turning the tap on. If you look at the world through rose-colored glasses, then all you're going to do is feel happiness, joy, and peace. But if you're looking through with angry-colored glasses, then all you're going to feel is resentment, anger, jealousy, envy, all this type of stuff. So distrust, all that. So a key aspect of it is to reframe your understanding of the meaning associated with the situation and the belief you have with the situation, so that you can turn the tap off. If you want to go deeper and realize, a situation, say with your brother, your sister, your mum, your dad, then in the end, people will get to this point and they'll say, oh, mum and dad were just doing the best they could with what they had at the time. Well, what you're doing is you're actually jumping too quick. So yes, in the end, you may get to that point and you understand that dad was doing what he thought would actually help me. It's not just the best he could at what he could at the time with what he had, but he was actually, look at his intention, because previously you've been judging his actions, not his intention. And if you allow yourself to go deeper into the intention, you'll actually look back close towards the soul and the original soul decision to actually respond in that way. I was in a discussion one day with my mum about one of my first bosses in the military. She knew him personally, but she also knew that I'd suffered workplace harassment from him, including physical assault, for 18 months. And if you brought that up with mum, even to this present day, like, she would get the daggers out, man. Like, she doesn't want to talk about this guy. She'd like hung, draw and quarter him if she could. I'm at complete peace with him because I realised my part of the situation, and I realised also the gifts that he gave me. And so I've completely changed the way I look at him and the situations that I was in. But mum, who wasn't even in these situations, just because of her love for me, still has this resentment and anger at him. And that's coming, and I can see through that anger now, and I can see where it's truly coming from a place of love. So I don't engage the anger, I gauge the love.
Because you've already dealt with your own anger, which is the next aspect of this forgiveness equation. So the glasses is the cognitive aspect. The glasses is the mind stuff. It's reframing, it's talking about it, it's getting an understanding of what's actually happened so that you can then move on, and rather than be stuck in that.
And it's really critical to understand. You might have heard of cognitive behavior therapy, acceptance commitment therapy. These type of things are in the glasses realm, in the cognitive space. One of the reasons why cognitive behavior therapy is a roughly 60% effective is because of the next missing component, and that is the bucket, and that is the emotion. So imagine a point in time occurs and a situation happens where you get really, really pissed off and you associate the meaning to a person. Someone does something you don't really like. From that moment in time until a point where you decide to change your mental view or your perspective and forgive them, you've had a whole string of time where you've filled the bucket up. You've just kept filling the anger bucket, anger bucket, anger bucket, anger bucket. It's still right there. So if you just turn around in a moment in time and forgive them, or switch the way that you actually think about them, this residual emotion is still there. And this residual emotion is the reason why people have relapses, the reason why people find it hard to actually forgive and forget. They'll even use those terms. Or the reason why, okay, I might have actually changed the way I think about it, but I keep thinking about it in a negative sense. I've forgiven them, but why do I still think negatively about it? Because the residual emotion is still there. And so that must be emptied. Once you go through the change, the cognitive element and the emotional element, you will know, because you hit this place where you receive a gift. And what is the gift? The gift is what's called a heart state. You will feel something like overwhelming joy or love, compassion, honor, gratitude, these type of deep-seated feelings where you get it. You get it at a soul level. It's not a cognitive level, it's a being level. And you'll understand and realize, oh, okay, I understand what he was trying to do in that moment. I worked with one guy who was an amazing man, had issues with his father, never really had a relationship with him. But to see him realize that his dad was battling depression for most of his adult and teenage life. And what his dad was trying to do, in the only way he knew, was to keep his son above the water. Just keep his head above water. And he did that through complete self-sacrifice in weird ways that wouldn't, to the average eye, be seen as, doing that. But when he was able to heal the wound, to let go of the emotion attached to it, he could actually see his father's intention, and from that intention could really shift to a deeper place of of love and gratitude for his father.
Now, forgiveness is essentially key for us to be able to clear and to gain greater clarity.
It's the way you transcend something.
Yeah, absolutely, and it allows us to get that confidence in self. And sometimes forgiveness from others can lead to forgiveness of self. But forgiveness is always it's always the point that we want to arrive at, because it's what keeps our heart open. Because if we make a decision that changes something that where we were hurt, there is still the residual there. So in order for us to continue to keep moving ahead, we need to be aware of the forgiveness, because otherwise, as soon as we have that shift, what's going to happen, which always happens, and it's a natural aspect of healing, is something will come up and show up for us that's going to challenge whether we've actually dealt with that. And if we haven't allowed ourselves to completely deal with it, we will close down our heart a little bit more. So the bucket and the ability to continually feel the emotion rather than running away from it is the key to getting the gift and the forgiveness.
What do I mean by bucket? Quickly, I'll show you. Imagine a bucket in your stomach, and anger, sadness, fear, shame, and guilt are the 5 emotions that we suppress. And what we do is we keep filling it up, and not doing anything about it. Why don't we do anything about it? Because we've never been told this. We've never been taught ways to actually do this. So the bucket gets full. How full can it get? It can actually get fuller than full. It's called a positive meniscus. And with a cup of water, and you know what you're doing with a 50-cent piece, you can actually rest it on the top because of the water tension. Anyone who's done a back whack or a belly flop will know this in the pool. Water tension is quite cohesive, but what happens is one final drop of water comes down, or final drop of motion comes down and hits that, we get an avalanche compared to what went in. That one drop completely goes ballistic. Ask you these questions. Have you ever gone ballistic over a trivial event before? Have you ever cried a river over something that wasn't sad? Have you ever stopped yourself doing something for fear of what other people will actually say, or fear of failure? Have you ever walked through the bush and stepped on a stick and thinking it was a snake? That's called death by stick. All these things are telling us that our buckets are full. Now, if you've ever fallen for the guilt trip in your relationship or with anyone, if you ever fallen for a guilt trip, it means your guilt bucket's full.
If you're not doing things because you're afraid, your fear bucket is full, because you don't want to take that next step because you know that your bucket will overflow and you don't want to have to feel the fear.
Now, society has an entire industry, couple of industries actually, completely based around fear. One is the risk industry, which has gone ballistic in all testosterone-dominated cultures, but also the insurance industry. If you understand the etymology or the genesis of the word insurance, it means not of sure mind. So they're playing on your fear. And if you want to know the next insurance policy to come out, have a look at what's been placed in the ads at the moment, because what they will do is attempt to incite fear and then bring you the solution. Pay us money and we'll look after it. The funniest one is death insurance. Just pay us money and we'll make sure everything's fine when you die. What the? So a lot of those things, the insurance industry is completely built on your fear. It would not exist if it didn't get into if you didn't have that emotion. So that's what we mean by bucket. Getting to and releasing the emotion is the really pivotal thing that allows you to cleanse and truly transcend to forgive. So the really key element of all this is the healing is in the appropriate expression of the feeling. If you've got a lot of anger, go and beat the crap out of a punching bag.
Not a person.
Not a person. If you hit a person out of anger, guilt will come back in. I work with
or any other animal or living being.
Yeah, and it will come back in. Now, if you believe it doesn't, and there are people out there that believe that they can inflict pain on another sentient being without feeling guilt or shame, what's happened is they've numbed themselves to emotion. And I know that because that's where I was in the military. I thought there were 4 emotions in the military: fired up, pissed off, shattered, and numb. And if you haven't worked out, none of them are emotions, nor do they give you any message. So if you've got sadness, go into the sadness. Allow yourself to become one with the sadness and allow it to flow. If you've got shame, we can send them the emotional release technique. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll send you a link to a YouTube video that I put together with a really powerful technique. And I've got to say it's a really powerful technique because it literally saved my life. When I was in my darkest days, I became an expert at doing this technique like that. So we'll send that to you. And we can do that tonight.
It'll be out to them within the next 24 hours.
It'll be out to you within the next 24 hours. You heard it first. So
it'll be on the page with all the resources.
The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is just quickly about these 5. Anger's not negative. It is actually a very empowering emotion. Why? Because it releases energizing hormones, particularly adrenaline. So what happens with anger? Anger is about two primary things. Change is required. So my expectations of the world aren't being met, or my personal boundaries are being violated. I will feel anger if either of those 2 things happen. And I'll feel anger because I need to empower myself to change. We'll often lock down or have lockjaw or bad breath. Both of those are symptomology of suppressed anger. Why are we locking down our jaw? Because we want to say something, but we're suppressing the ability to say it. If you say it in emotion, in anger, you will not hit your note. It will not resonate. The emotion will actually come out over the words. Remember, words in communication are less than 7% of it. The rest is emotional tone, body language, and everything like that. And when you speak in emotion or act in emotion, then what's happening is you are being buffeted by it. It's controlling you as opposed to you utilizing it.
Sometimes, though, if you're so disconnected from emotion, if someone is so disconnected from emotion, the words may actually be necessary because they may need to hear themselves saying those words to recognize what's actually going on for them. So everybody has a different response to what's actually happening for them.
That's a really great point. And a technique to do that we used a lot when we were, rebuilding our relationship was I realized that I needed to own stuff, but I couldn't understand how I could own it in language. So I needed to project at Kirsty, using Kirsty, and speak at her so that I could, in speaking the words, cognitively understand where I was slipping up. Now, what I do is frame that discussion and say, gorgeous, I'm just about to project at you. This is not about you. It's about me, but I don't know how to own this right now. So I'm letting her know, I'm treating her with respect and reverence and letting her know that what's going to come out of my mouth, I know is all about me. The words aren't going to match that understanding until I can speak it and then get that understanding. And funnily enough, half the time I'd only get half a sentence out and I go, and I get it straight away. But that's setting up a relationship that obviously, we had a limited amount of trust between the 2 of us initially because, of the emotional toxicity in my system and the fact that Kirst was dealing with her own stuff as well. So we had to rebuild. Part of the rebuilding was setting up safe rooms that in conversation that could actually help that. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things in relation to this is fear, especially with the feedback that we've received from people in what are your intentions for this. Fear is one of those things at this time of year that we can really consider as an important thing for us to look at, because it will be the fear that will be stopping us from, for example, expressing the angry words. It will be the fear that will be stopping us from taking that little step that we know we need to take.
Fear of saying no.
The fear of saying no, exactly. So the importance of us allowing ourselves to recognize the fear of what's stopping me, by going back over all the stuff we've done, and the fear, if I'm not expressing anger, I'm probably afraid of anger. I'm probably afraid of my power. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on there underneath there for me. So the fear is a great thing for you to explore in the context of what we've already done in this course. We can give you so much information, but it's important to bring it back to where are we now? What have we done? And what is my intention for this specific course, so that I can feel more clear and more confident in moving forward, because that's what I actually want. I want to feel confident and clear to approach the next phase of my life and know that I'm taking that next right step, which will lead me to the next right step after that.
So I mentioned don't act in emotion, act from it. Fear is a beautiful one. Fear is not a red light, it's an amber light. It's activating your sympathetic nervous system. In other words, it's turning your sensory receptive ability up to a heightened level. Why? You walked down this path before and it didn't go well, or you've never been down that path and there's trepidation. So it's telling you to turn on all your senses to actually allow yourself to receive. People with anxiety issues, fear is a critical element, but it's been misunderstood in the anxiety context. So pulling it out of the blanket term anxiety and actually looking at it in itself and moving through it. Louise, you mentioned, how do I become comfortable being, or have the courage to be vulnerable? All the stuff we're doing is, no, I've got one more slide. All the stuff we're doing, the vulnerability comes in your ability to allow yourself to feel emotion and not judge yourself for feeling it. Mm. And it's like, it took me some time to be able to stand there and just speak from my heart space, to cry in front of people. Why? Because I didn't think that was manly. It was. Okay, I've got to hurry up. Time. But you understand what I mean? So by allowing ourselves to own the emotion, it's good. The thing, quick slide that I wanted to show you is this one here. And this is really, really pivotal. So when you start opening up emotions, be aware it can be a Pandora's box. Why? Because you have to go through an ascension level. Now, it's not this clean. It's not straight up like that. It is a dance. And that's why we say with emotion release, it is raw and it will often be messy. Shame and guilt, you'll notice this, by the way, this scales between 1 and 1,000, 1,000 being Christ consciousness, and 0 being complete death. In other words, there's no sentient life within the individual. And the scale is of where these specific emotions vibrate. If you want to look more into this, the work of Dr. David Hawkins, MD, who was a clinical psychiatrist and kinesiologist, Power versus Force is a great one, and Healing is, I think, his other book, Healing Self.
I think a couple of the important things to take away from this particular diagram as you look at it is that shame is the lowest vibrating emotion, shame and guilt. So you've got shame, guilt and apathy, and when you allow yourselves to move beyond those, there will be a sense of grief. There'll be a sense of grief that, oh my God, I've allowed myself to keep myself stuck for this long. And then when I acknowledge the grief, then I know that I need to do something about it. So the fear comes up. And the fear comes up, and then I'm exploring, well, if I'm afraid, well, what do I actually want? And then that invokes the anger. So the anger is an uplifting emotion. It's calling us to do something about our situation and change it. And so you can see we move up the scale to the point where we get to acceptance. And acceptance is so different to apathy. But a person who is in acceptance often will be, well, they will be moved out of the story. Whereas someone in apathy is just trying to push the story away. They're trying to completely disconnect, disassociate from the story. Someone in acceptance is allowing the story to be there and to acknowledge its presence, at the same time choose not to engage in that story anymore.
So in a nutshell, we're taking you, through basically an introduction to emotions. The key aspect is you can't think yourself through an emotion. You've got to feel it. And that can be scary for a lot of people, especially when they haven't done that before. Matter of fact, It's been so scary for many people that they've run to their left brain. They're analytical, procedural, logical, and they've completely detached from that feeling side, their feeling or emotional body. Part of their journey back is to go into their emotional body. And there are other people that are empaths and didn't know actually how to utilize or how to move the emotion, so they became sympaths. A sympath is a person who takes other person's emotion on for themselves. And the issue with that is you can't process that energy because it's not yours. An empath is someone who understands how another person is feeling, but doesn't take it on as their own. If you look at the health profession, there are an incredible amount of sympaths who believe they're empaths, but they're actually not. They're sympaths because their health, medical profession actually has one of the worst health records for professions as it goes. So where to from here? With that understanding of the emotion, it's really now pivotal to understand if we're looking down at 2020 and beyond, then what do I want? How am I going to structure a way of being so that I get what I want? I must understand the emotional language that's being spoken to me by myself. Meg asked a question before, am I missing something? Our answer was, you're the person who will know by listening to your emotions. And this is where you can, if you clean your emotions out, if you let go and do the work, you'll find that it becomes so much easier to listen to yourself and understand the intuitive language which is happening on a constant daily moment by moment basis. As part of that, fear, we cannot understate fear, shame or guilt. The biggest killer in men between 15 and 44 in Australian society is not suicide. The ABS will tell you it is. It's the shame and the guilt which drive a person to believe they have to take that action. So when we understand fear, shame and guilt, then we'll understand why anger comes out. Anger is a protective emotion. It sits on the top of everything else and tries to push it away. So anger's surface, you go through it and you'll get to the real meat, to the shame and the guilt. If you are forecasting your future based in fear, shame or guilt, then that is what you'll attract into your life. If you do the work now and go into and release those beliefs about yourself that have been attached by the emotion of shame and guilt and fear, then you will allow yourself to construct a future that you will want to be part of. And it's stepping stones. Where am I now? Where do I want to go? What's my first step? So with fear, if I fear doing something, well, what skill? Think about change. If I fear not having enough to be capable on the other side of change, it's about me. What skill do I need to practice to upskill myself, to become more proficient at, more competent at, to allow myself to be confident, capable, and credible on the other side of change? That then gives me something to work from. Anything you add to that?
So as we've said already in this call, you've done those exercises already. So what we've done already is reflective. It's reflective on where we've been and the past. So we've looked at the Wheel of Life and we've looked at reflections upon 2019. So what we suggest you do from here now is, because our mind just wants to get to the next best, the next thing. I know would be my mind, would want to get to the next thing. My mind just wants to keep
talking to you, but I realise you guys have lives. So.
Wants to get to the next thing. So what we want to do is we're going to give you another reflective exercise on success and failure. So again, this exercise can help you look at those things that you're afraid of, to go more deeply into those patterns that are stopping you, that have stopped you from having what you want, that have been creating that dislike about where I am and what I've had so far. And that reflective exercise will be sent out to you tonight as well. And then this call recording will be sent out too. This is what we want you to do, is we want you to really spend this time in reflection, because as I've said, I'm pretty sure I've said it over and over already, it's in the stillness and it's in the reflection where we find the clarity. When we take the time to give ourselves the space and really go into the heart and ask ourselves the truth of the question, that's where we get the clarity.
I trust that you've been able to get quite a lot from today. be aware this 1 2-hour session, and realistically, we've only talked about emotions for realistically about an hour and a quarter. We're condensing, like when I go bush with men, we're doing this over 2 days. And so we're giving you a taste of what's out there. If emotional literacy is something at your heart, then for 2020, what are you going to do for yourself to upskill yourself in this area? How are you going to breed emotional literacy on a journey towards emotional intimacy? And really have a look at your success criteria as well. Joe's just asked a question. And have a look at, when you're looking at your success criteria, have a look at that as well as far as emotional intimacy.
Sending the recording out to us.
No, Joe, we'll send it to everyone but you.
Yes, as per yesterday, the recording will be sent out in an email, and then all of those recordings will be uploaded to a resources page that you guys will be able to access forever after this. So all the resources, including the bonuses from this course, will be on one page. At the moment, they're being sent out as we go. So Joe says that she didn't get yesterday. That's really interesting. We can check. What I would suggest is that you have a look at your junk mail, and if you can't find it, then send me an email and we'll try and get to that. If you've got questions from today, because there was so much information that was given, please bring them up in the forum. So, okay, you've checked junk radio. We'll have a look, Joe. If you've got questions, please bring them up in the forum. If you don't get anything, also email us straight away and bring them up in the forum as well, because we want you to have the information. We want you to have the recordings. We want you to be able to access this stuff. So just allow yourself to be with what you have. There's no rush. Remember that you can access this forevermore. So there's no rush for you to get to a certain place by a certain time. Forevermore.
You could do a song.
But for now, we're going to let you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll be back on tomorrow with our friend Megan. If
you have any questions, there will be a upfront part of the session which is for you to ask questions. So
absolutely,
if stuff's been going on for you, throw it on the forum by all means. But if you want it actually dealt with here, then save it for that, and we'll go from there.
Yep.
I've had a hoot. I don't know about you.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. So great to see more faces on the call today, and we really enjoyed the last two sessions with you guys. So
time for tomorrow is
I believe it's 2 p.m. It's all in the email. So
all in the email.
Yes. So just go back to the original email, and 2 p.m. is for tomorrow. That will be confirmed when the next email comes out, and you guys will have all the information you need. As per Dorothy in the Land of Oz, you've had it all along. We're just helping you remember that.
That's a good analogy, babe. Well done.
Yeah.
Great way to end it. Much love to everybody.
Have a good night, guys. Oh, do we stop recording first?